New World is making an insane comeback in 2022. That's because the game has basically been redesigned from the ground up. So if you're like me and you played the game last year but lost interest fairly quickly after release, or even if you've never played New World before, this is literally the best time to get into the game thanks to these 5 amazing new features that I want to make sure that you know about so you can decide for yourself if this massive New World update is right for you. Starting with number 5, fresh start servers for players that want to start over. These are literally what you would expect from the name, brand new servers where every player starts again from scratch. Your character is back to level 1, no gear, no skills, no progression, except for cosmetics if you've gotten those on a previous server before. But I think this was a really smart move on the part of Amazon Games, because generally speaking, the starting experience for MMOs is the most popular time to play the game. Everyone is exploring the new content, starting together, and trying to race to the top for server firsts. Amazon bet big on this concept that New World veterans and brand new players alike would flock back to the game for that day one experience, and they were 100% right. Just on day one of the fresh start servers, along with a combined streamer event on Twitch, over 150,000 active viewers were watching the game, which is pretty amazing for a quote dead game if you think about it. Now, if you are interested in joining a fresh start server, it's extremely simple. Just start a new character and select one of the servers for your region with the sun icon next to the name to get started. I have a link in the description too for the New World Fresh Start server rollout guide if you have any more questions on how to get going. Number 4 on this list, which honestly surprised me, is the new enemy types. Now, if you've played New World before, you probably know just how much the game recycled its enemies and AI systems to fill out its massive open world. And as you progress to harder zones, you often face off against the same basic enemies that you found in the starting zone, just with harder hitting attacks. Well, Amazon has done a fantastic job since release expanding on enemy variations and abilities. Apparently there are over 40 new enemy types that you can find in the game now, whether it's in the open world space or within dungeons or through questing. In my first few hours on a fresh start server today, I found at least 5 of these new enemy types, which was a very nice surprise just to have that visual difference, but also different enemy AI behaviors to learn and find counters to. I even found new mini-bosses where there were none before, and even the game's tutorial boss, which is usually a simple, straightforward fight, now even has multiple boss stages, which made it feel really good, almost like playing a new game. Number 3 is improved mechanics, and there's so much here that I might have to do a completely separate video on this, but let me just start by saying that recent changes made in this area are really amazing, and these address probably my number 1 gripe with New World, at least at release, which was that progressing your character, engaging with the content just was not that fun. Since those early days, basic game mechanics in New World have actually improved dramatically. For example, fast travel costs are now greatly reduced, and fast travel shines are now visible on the map, making them easier to unlock in new areas. And respawning at your local inn, which is a free version of fast travel, now can be done every 20 minutes instead of every 2 hours. Also, running from place to place is now even faster too when you're traversing on roads, thanks to a unique speed buff while not in combat. And also, coordinated groups is now much easier too with a built-in group finder. Plus, crafting those time-consuming dungeon keys is now thankfully gone forever. So basically, most of the barriers and time sinks that made New World so frustrating in the beginning have actually been completely removed from the game in favor of more player-friendly mechanics that just actually feel good to play and feel less like a chore or like a full-time job. They've even added some new buffs to the game, which I really like. These come from the new musical instruments, for example, which let you progress your crafting skills and territory standing much faster than was previously possible. And speaking of progression, there are a ton of new stories and quests that have been added to the game since release, particularly in the earlier zones, to improve that overall leveling and immersion experience of New World. I personally was a bit skeptical of this feature at first because I thought it wouldn't really make much of a difference, but actually having these new enemy factions and new enemy leaders to fight against, brand new locations and points of interest, and also a much deeper connection to the main storyline through some new interactions with Isabel and her voiceovers have really tied together the entire experience, in my opinion, into something that grabs your attention and makes you want to keep playing. New quest types like wandering NPCs and puzzles also help to mix things up along the way and keep quests more interesting. And most NPC voice acting in New World is actually top-notch, some of the best in the genre in my opinion, so definitely worth checking out if you are into stories and questing. My first few hours this week getting into a fresh start New World server, exploring these new quests and locations, was probably one of the most memorable and enjoyable starting experiences I've had in a recent MMO, and that's really saying something. But this list could not be complete without mentioning my number one favorite update to New World, and that is the new weapon skill lines. At a time where more established MMOs have begun to stagnate a bit and provide fewer options for progression and builds, New World has consistently been adding new weapons and skills to its game. The Greatsword, for example, is probably my favorite new addition, which has both an offensive skill tree for DPS and a more defensive focused tree for tanking, but I'm also a fan of the Blunderbuss and Void Gauntlet as well. 3 brand new weapons in the span of 1 year is actually quite impressive, especially when you consider all the other big feature updates we've already talked about in this video. Hopefully they keep it up because giving players new options for combat and build crafting is one of the most important elements of keeping an MMO alive over time. But that said, I'm curious what you guys think about all of this. Have you returned to New World or visited for the first time this week? Or are there still some additional features you think the game needs before you can invest your time? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Make sure to leave a like for that YouTube algorithm and subscribe if you want to see more MMO and RPG videos just like this one. And thanks for watching.